Hey guys, and welcome back to another Off the Cuff. Sorry I missed yesterday. I was feeling crap and I ended up with a virus on my computer and infected a bunch of stuff. So I've been trying to get things working again. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about the 6th of January, 2020. And the reason for that is partly for myself, because I know how all of us, including myself, can forget about things or maybe not quite remember things the way they were years down the line. And I feel like, although obviously I'm not the only one talking about it, if I can remind myself of this in years to come, future me will appreciate it. So, future me, this is partly for you. The 6th of January was not what people are saying it is. Now, I know that everyone that follows this channel is not going to be one way inclined politically, and that's cool. Like, I think that if everybody that you watch or agree with, let me rephrase that, if everybody you watch or hang around with agrees with you on everything, you're in a cult or the military. That sounds bad. I don't mean it that way, but you know what I mean. It's good to have disagreements. My personal opinion, and from what I've seen on January the 6th, and maybe it's kind of easier for me to see this as somebody that isn't in the country, was that it was a big deal. Doesn't happen every day, doesn't happen every year. But it wasn't what they're making it out to be. You know, there were no weapons, there was no shooting, not by the people that went in. We've seen a lot of lies about this come out over the last sort of year and a half. And recently we've had some hearings, and those hearings have been somewhat cringe. Not a big fan of that word, but it's probably the best word to describe it, because these people on all sides are just lying. Like, anybody with more than one brain cell can tell. Not just from the poor acting, you know, you've got people crying, but they don't have tears, and they don't have red bloodshot eyes, and they're not wiping the tears away. They're just kind of, I was there and it was terrible. But also just because of the facts. So it's kind of scary, I have to say, because I feel bad. I mean, look, my country's probably no better, but I feel bad for Americans when I'm seeing, you know, very senior politicians clearly just making up the narrative again. But this time it just seems so obvious. I can't wait for you guys. If you haven't seen this, I can't wait for you guys to see this. What I'm about to show you is a clip from Officer Harry Dunn at the recent hearings about Jan 6th. Officer Harry Dunn, is not the most apolitical person in the world. His Twitter account, which I will hopefully bring up now, bing, wasn't locked a few days ago. And the reason it's now locked is because it looks like the Twitter account of, I don't know, a blue-haired SJW. No offense, blue-haired SJWs, it's just what it is. He had things up there about the squad and about how amazing AOC is and how racist Donald Trump is and how racist America is. He had quotes up there about critical race theory being a good thing, and all sorts of stuff, like from the 1619 project. I heard from one source he had up there. I've seen some of the other stuff. Haven't seen the 1619 thing. So yeah, he was basically a far leftist. And that's okay. Like, not all of our police can be, you know, one way or the other, or apolitical. But it's probably not particularly great if you're bringing him in for a hearing, especially a publicised hearing, if that's the right word. I feel like that's the wrong word. That everybody's going to see. Because you've got kids watching this, and they're watching a policeman blatantly lie. And it's obvious that he's lying, for many reasons, but I'll give you one amazing reason. The people that were involved in January 6th, the 44 people that actually entered the Capitol building, the main building, because obviously there were, 1,000, I think they said, on the complex. They were not all right-wing conservative Trump supporters. We know that there was a mixture. There were some anarchists, there were some Trump supporters, typical Trump supporting conservatives. There were some FBI agents. We know that now, don't we? There were some professional protesters, or at least pathological protesters, that we now know have been at BLM protests, vegan protests, even anti-Trump protests. So they obviously just like that. Like Buffalo Head, he's aside from being just insane, he was photographed at BLM protests and immigration protests and stuff. So these people are just in it for the adrenaline, I guess. And I believe if you have all those people that are technically not on the same side, even though they're currently, at that moment, they were doing the same rough thing, somebody would have taken some footage of this event that he talks about happening, especially when he says other people had the same thing that day. The media would have paid a fortune for that sort of footage. You'll see what I mean. We already know there were two freelance, self-confirmed lefties in there for CNN. They were then on CNN about 3 days later, and they admitted that they'd been paid 75 grand. If you don't remember them, it was the mixed race dude and the white girl, and they were running out, and he was saying, after that lady was shot by the Capitol Police, he was shouting, "See, I told you we could do it," and she was going, "Oh, I can't believe I ever doubted you," or something like that. Anyway, so have a look and see if you agree with me that it's just a coincidence that no one caught this tale on camera, and not one single person even sold it as a verbal, just as a story to the media. Have a look.
More and more insurrectionists were pouring into the area by the speaker's lobby near the rotunda, and some wearing MAGA hats and shirts that said Trump 2020. I told them to just leave the Capitol, and in response they yelled, "No, man, this is our house. President Trump invited us here. We're here to stop the steal. Joe Biden is not the president. Nobody voted for Joe Biden." I'm a law enforcement officer, and I do my best to keep politics out of my job. But in this circumstance, I responded, "Well, I voted for Joe Biden. Does my vote not count? Am I nobody?" That prompted a torrent of racial epithets. One woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, "You hear that, guys? This voted for Joe Biden." Then the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo!"
Shut up. Shut up. You've gone too far. Way too far.
No one had ever called me a while wearing the uniform of a Capitol Police officer. In the days following the attempted insurrection, other Black officers shared with me their own stories of racial abuse on January 6th. One officer told me he had never, and in his entire 40 years of life, been called to his face, and that streak ended on January 6th.
Well, that's interesting. So at the very least, his friend was saying that he'd never experienced racism, even until the very end of Donald Trump's time in office. So if that's true, what happened, which I just don't believe, but prove me wrong, by all means, and I will apologise. So he'd never experienced racism, yet this dude was on Twitter saying how terrible the country was. Well, there you go. Kind of says it all. When you say the quiet part loud.
Yet another Black officer later told me he had been confronted by insurrectionists in the Capitol who told him, "Put your gun down and we'll show you what kind of you really are."
There cannot be more than 7 people that believe this bollocks, please.
To be candid, the rest of the afternoon is a blur. But I know I went throughout the Capitol to assist officers who needed aid and help expel more insurrectionists.
And there you go. So yeah, I didn't really want to turn this into a whole thing about that whole event, and this is not really about that. It's supposed to just be about this particular hearing. But we're just finding out, every week or 2 weeks or month that goes by, we're finding out another thing that's turned out to be a lie, and I think this thing will turn out to be a lie. I mean, there's no way I think anyone can prove it either way. I just personally think that we didn't even hear stories of racial abuse of cops. Like, how can we not even heard a story or seen anything on video or heard any clip of it in the back of a phone call? Or it just seems too much, and I think they've overplayed the hand, and I think it makes them look stupid. And to see Adam Kinzinger, he's a Republican representative, I think Illinois, somewhere in the north, around the lakes, to see him fake crying is beyond irritating. That dude just needs to jump to the Democrats. Listen, there's nothing wrong with it, dude. Maybe you've grown up and you've done the opposite of 90% of the population, and you've gone from being centre right to establishment left. Normally, people tend to be liberal when they're young, and then they grow up and they become a little bit more to the right or to the middle. Just come out and admit it. Just stop being a pleb, because it's freaking embarrassing. But yeah, I just want people to keep a little note of all of the stories, like the officer being beaten to death with a fire extinguisher, who turned out not to have been beaten to death, then turned out he wasn't beaten with a fire extinguisher, then it turned out he died from a congenital heart condition. AOC, who said that, they tried to kidnap her or something, then it turned out that it was one policeman that had gone in her office to escort her out. Then it turned out that that was actually an hour before any of this started, and that it was to do with a separate fire alarm threat or bomb threat or something. Initially heard there was loads of people dead, then none. Then CNN said there were loads of weapons involved. Then we heard there was 0 weapons taken on that day. There are just many things. And they also keep using the word insurrection. That dude used it as well. Like 2 or 3 times. Maybe 3 or 4 times even. Insurrection this, insurrection that. It wasn't an insurrection. It was a bunch of people hyped up. They shouldn't have done it. It was stupid. At the time, I thought, this is insane. As I said, they're going to use it against you. Anyway, let me know what you think. Sorry for the gap in the videos, guys. And yeah, I will see you soon.
Winston stopped writing, partly because he was suffering from cramp. He did not know what had made him pour out this stream of rubbish